Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. It means everything to me. Before we get started, I just want to say to everybody that has been reaching out to me, showing me support, I appreciate you so much. When I tell you I appreciate you, I truly, truly mean it. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Please leave me a comment. Please leave me a like. It would mean so much to me. You guys are just the best, and I thank you, thank you, thank you. This is 21-year-old Corlesia Mukes. She's a single mother of four living in Jeffersonville, Indiana. Corlesia was described by others as loving, caring, and supportive. Living with her was her childhood best friend, 21-year-old Tanae Counts. These two were so close that Corlesia's mother has even said that she looked at her as a daughter. October 11th, 2021. The two friends go on a gambling ship. After returning home, it is said that a fight breaks out between the two friends. That's when Tanae pulls out a knife and stabs her best friend to death inside their apartment and in front of Corlesia's sister, Keena, who watched her sister die. The motive for this murder is not released. The context of the argument is not released. And the strangest of all is that on December 17th, 2021, Tanae Counts pled guilty to reckless homicide and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. 6 years! This death is not adding up for me. But nevertheless, keep this family in your prayers, especially those four babies who now have to grow up without a mommy. The father of Muke's four children, aged 6, 5, 4, and 3, says the children are too young to understand what has happened, but they need their mother, they miss their mother, and they're crying out for their mother.
Grieving and we mourning right now.
These are the faces of a grieving family, but for Brandy Mukes and her husband, the pain is unimaginable.
Because we didn't expect this, to happen to our child.
On Monday, their daughter, 21-year-old Corlesia Mukes, was stabbed to death at an apartment in Northtown Terrace in Jeffersonville.
It is very shocking because she didn't even begin to live a life.
Jeffersonville police arrested Tanae Counts and charged her with murder.
It was her best friend. I understand that they came back from the gambling boat, then it escalated they end up having an argument, then it escalated to a fight, and then it escalated to where my daughter was stabbed.
But for now, she still doesn't know how or why things escalated to violence.
I'm still waiting on answers because I don't understand, why.
While Mukes and her husband wait for answers, that's not their only priority.
Right now, I need all the help I can get for my grandkids and to bury my daughter.
Right now, family and friends are providing emotional support, but a relative has also started a GoFundMe page and is asking the public to help lay the young mother to rest.
She left behind 4 kids.
Mukes says the money will be used to pay for the funeral and support her grandchildren.
We're trying to figure out how to let them know, that she's gone. They're too young to know what's going on right now, but every child wants their mother. They haven't seen her. They crying out for her. Where's mommy?
21-year-old Alexis Crawford was a senior at Clark Atlanta University. She was a double major in sociology and criminal justice. She graduated from Clark Central High School in 2016, and friends described her as caring, nurturing, and loving. 21-year-old Jordan Jones was Alexis's roommate. The two met in their freshman year at CAU. Jordan grew up in a small town in Auburn Hills, Michigan, where her father is a church deacon and a law enforcement officer. Alexis and Jordan bonded immediately. They became best friends and later moved in an off-campus apartment together. Alexis even invited Jordan to meet her family. Jordan would go on to spend major holidays at Alexis's home, such as Thanksgiving and Easter, and she knew Alexis's parents and siblings very well. The duo was even referred to as two peas in a pod. On October 26, 2019, Alexis, Jordan, and Jordan's boyfriend, 21-year-old Baron Brantley, decided to go out for a few drinks. When they returned home, all three of them were heavily intoxicated, and at some point, Jordan felt sick and went to lay down in her bed. When Jordan woke up hours later, she tried to enter the bathroom, but it was locked. She knocked on the door, and out came Baron, shirtless. Alexis was lying on the bathroom floor unconscious, only wearing a bra. The first thing Baron would say to Jordan is, "I didn't touch her. I didn't R her." An argument ensued between Jordan and Barron and ended when Barron grabbed the keys to Jordan's Chevy Cruze and took off. Jordan would call 911 to report her car stolen and casually add, "I think something happened to my friend." The next call Jordan would make would be to her older sister's friend Brittany, asking her to come over. When Brittany arrived, she found Alexis sitting on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Alexis told Brittany she had been SA'd. Brittany immediately called 911 and they transported her to the hospital. While at the hospital, Alexis filed an SA claim against Barron, alleging he had AR'd her while she was unconscious. Alexis told Atlanta police she recalled Barron touching and kissing her, but at some point she had blacked out. When she came to, she found herself lying on the bathroom floor, nearly naked. Alexis underwent an R kit, and the results confirmed her worst fears. Barron's sperm was inside of her body. For reasons unknown, Barron was not immediately arrested. Atlanta police would later say that Alexis had only reported unwarranted touching and kissing. The police department's failure to detain Barron proved to be fatal for Alexis. Somehow, Barron managed to convince Jordan that he was so intoxicated on the night of the 26th that he had mistaken Alexis for her, and the couple reconciled. I mean, really? That's a stretch. That's a really big stretch in my opinion. But, okay. After filing SA charges against Barron, Alexis and Jordan were no longer on speaking terms. From that day forward, it was clear who had Jordan's undying support, and it wasn't Alexis, which is terrible. It's terrible. Following this, Alexis texted her friends to tell them she felt uncomfortable and afraid to sleep in her bedroom, so she ended up sleeping on the living room sofa instead. But what she didn't know was at the time, the person she was afraid of was just a few feet away from her, hiding inside Jordan's bedroom. Jordan had snuck Barron back into the apartment on October 27th and had allowed him to stay in her room for the next 4 days, unbeknownst to Alexis. So that means that while Jordan was away at work or in class, Alexis was alone in the apartment with him and she had no idea. On Wednesday, October 30th, Alexis FaceTimed her mother Tammy at 3:23 p.m. Her mother Tammy would tell detectives that Alexis was laughing and appeared to be in good spirits during that call. At 8:44 p.m., Alexis' sister Alexandria texted her to ask her what her plans were for the weekend. Alexis replied nothing. Alexandria sent a follow-up text message but never received a reply from her sister. At 11:30 p.m., Alexis was seen on surveillance footage at a liquor store wearing a red hoodie and black pants, but she was never seen alive again after that. On October 31st, Alexis' family tried to get a hold of her, but all of their calls and texts went unanswered. This silence was unusual. Alexis always responded to her family, even if it was just to say hi, she was busy and couldn't talk. On November 1st, Alexis' family reported her missing. Later that same day, Atlanta police paid a visit to off-campus apartments she shared with Jordan. Jordan told detectives that on that night of October 30th, Alexis asked for a ride to the liquor store. Jordan agreed and took Alexis to the store at 11:30 p.m. They returned home at 12:30 a.m. She went on to claim that she went straight to bed since she had an early class and that when she woke up the next morning, Alexis was gone. Jordan went on to tell detectives Alexis' family didn't know where Alexis was or what happened to her. It would turn out to be just one of the many lies she would tell throughout this investigation. Detectives were unable to find Alexis' phone, bank cards, or student ID anywhere inside of the apartment. Phone records show that her phone had been turned off sometime between 2 and 3 a.m., and after that, all signs of Alexis had seemingly vanished. Atlanta police would launch a statewide search for her. Flyers were posted all over campus. Alexis' parents begged the public for help, asking for the safe return of their daughter. Choking back tears, Alexis' father pleaded, "I love you, baby. Just come home." Jordan even posted a photo of Alexis' flyer on her Instagram page and later wrote, "I just feel helpless. My heart is really hurting now." Snake, you're a snake. You are a snake. Alexis' loved ones would soon learn Jordan wasn't helpless at all. In fact, she was one of the two people who knew where Alexis was and what had happened to her. Jordan attempted to play the part of a concerned friend, but detectives quickly uncovered the truth. When detectives searched Alexis and Jordan's apartment, they came across a small drop of blood on the bathroom sink. With the use of luminol, they found traces of blood in at least 5 or 6 different areas inside of that apartment. Surveillance cameras from the parking garage of the apartment complex allegedly captured Jordan and Barron getting into Jordan's vehicle at 3 a.m., contradicting her claim that she had gone to bed at 12:30 a.m. Barron backed the car up to the elevator vestibule. They drove out of the complex 17 minutes later and returned at 4:09 a.m. Detectives uncovered messages between Jordan and Barron in which she told him to destroy the parking garage surveillance cameras, writing, "Get it done." A friend of Jordan's reached out to detectives. Jordan had texted her about a plastic bin. She said her parents had lent her a plastic bin as she was planning to move back home to Michigan. Jordan said she no longer had the bin and asked her friend to pretend she had borrowed it from her in case her parents questioned its whereabouts. Detectives would soon learn the vast significance of the missing plastic bin. On November 8th, detectives confronted Jordan with the evidence, and she allegedly confessed to the murder. With her father beside her, she led detectives to the body. Alexis's body was recovered from Exchange Park in DeKalb County. Her hands had been bound with a red hoodie she was last seen wearing, and a blue t-shirt was wrapped around her neck. Alexis's head was covered with a plastic garbage bag. A plastic bin was lying next to her body. According to Jordan's statement, after returning home from the liquor store on October 30th, she admitted to Alexis that Barron had been living in her room for the past 4 days. Alexis and Jordan began fighting. At some point, Barron allegedly ran out of Jordan's room and began choking Alexis. Following this confession, Barron was arrested. Barron allegedly admitted to detectives he strangled Alexis, but claimed Jordan had assisted by smothering her former best friend with a plastic garbage bag. Alexis fought for her life. She managed to rip a hole in the plastic bag. Barron continued to choke her until she stopped breathing. Afterwards, the couple allegedly put Alexis's body inside the plastic bin, loaded the bin into Jordan's vehicle, and drove to Exchange Park, where they pushed the bin over a hill. The impact of the fall led Alexis's body to fall out of the bin. The couple returned home shortly after 4 a.m., unsuccessfully cleaned up the crime scene, and went to bed. The next day, they went to a Halloween party together as if nothing ever happened.
A student now charged with killing a roommate is accused of trying to cover up the crime and to leave the state. Prosecutors arguing it is too risky to let Jordan Jones out of jail on bond while she awaits trial. The judge agreeing.
Jones was publicly identified as a suspect. She tried to withdraw from the college and move back to Michigan. They say while Jones was allegedly trying to hide Crawford's body, she was also packing.
She had sent a message after she helped stuff Miss Crawford's body into the Rubbermaid tote to a friend, asking her to replace that tote so she could put her clothes from her home.
Prosecutors also accused Jones of lying to Crawford's family about the alleged sexual assault involving Jones's boyfriend. They say Jones called Crawford's family and told them a rape kit at the hospital did not contain any DNA evidence. Prosecutors say that's a flat-out lie, and the kit does contain Brantley's DNA.
A detective testifying one of the suspects hid in Crawford's apartment for 4 days after she accused him of rape, then burst out of the bedroom and choked her.
That suspect, the boyfriend of Crawford's roommate, the roommate also charged in the murder. And from what we have seen in court so far, the boyfriend and the roommate may be trying to blame each other for what happened.
Yeah, really compelling day in court today. 11 Alive's Deborah Tuff explains what we've learned up to now. Deb?
You know, we knew from police reports before that after the alleged sex assault, Alexis Crawford was too scared to sleep in her own room. Today, the detective testified Alexis had no idea her roommate Jordan Jones sneaked her boyfriend, Barron Brantley, back into the apartment after the alleged sex assault and that he stayed hidden, sometimes in the apartment along with Crawford, while the roommate was in class. Crawford was first reported missing November 1st by her family. Police interviewed her roommate, Jordan Jones, who told police she'd gone to bed October 30th. When she woke up, Crawford was gone. But Detective Michael Young testified today surveillance video from the apartment parking deck showed Jones was lying.
It shows at 3:11 a.m. on the 31st, Jordan Jones and Brantley going out to Jones' car, backing up. They're off camera for about 6 or 7 minutes. There's a door that leads to her apartment where she backed up to. Leave the apartment complex at 3:18.
Young says the video showed they came back about an hour later, and he testified Jones eventually admitted she and Crawford got into a physical fight. And that's when Brantley, who'd been hiding in the apartment, popped out of the bedroom and choked her. The detective says Brantley says Jones took it a step further.
Jordan Jones put a plastic bag over her head.
Jones allegedly told police after realizing Crawford was dead, they put her in a bin and dumped it in the park. The detective said Jones was the one who led police to the body.
Her hands were bound and a blue T-shirt was around her neck.
The detective said Jones's parents had given her the bin the body was dumped in.
And her parents were coming down to move her out, and she needed the reason why the bin was missing.
Now, Detective Young testified after they dumped the body, Barrett and Jones returned home, slept, and then went to a Halloween party that night.
According to Fulton County records, Jordan and Barron were indicted by a grand jury for charges of murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and concealing the death of another. Barron faces an additional charge for aggravated sodomy. Jordan and Barron are currently being held in Fulton County Jail. Trial dates have not yet been set. The Fulton County District Attorney's Office will not be seeking the death penalty, though. Atlanta police say they don't have a motive for the murder yet, but most of us know the answer. She was murdered because she reported an essay. According to RAIN, only 1 out of every 4 essays are reported in the United States. What happened to Alexis is one of the top 3 reasons victims of essay do not report their crime: fear of retaliation. Alexis was courageous enough to report her abuser to try to prevent him from harming anyone else, and she paid for it with her life. Her death needs to be a wake-up call to remind us all that these crimes are real and ignoring victims' pleas can have dire consequences. Alexis had dreams of becoming a lawyer, and now her family are devoting their lives to finding justice for her.
This parking lot at Clark University became a safe space for well over 200 students as they expressed their grief and pain just days after learning about the death of Alexis Crawford.
The mood has been very hard. A lot of students have been trying to take account into what happened and just trying to find answers for things we can't find answers to.
We have gathered this evening in grief, but we've also gathered in celebration of the life of Alexis.
Student leaders like LaVon Campbell Jr. organized Sunday's vigil to give students a chance to remember Alexis in a positive way.
Whenever Clark University has difficult times, our CAU Panthers, we always come together just to uplift one another throughout these times.
Her family wasn't at the vigil, but the crowd prayed for them just the same.
Be their assurance and their guide.
And sent extra love to her brother, who is also a Clark student.
It's clear that we love her and we appreciated her time here.
Her body was found on Friday. Police say she was strangled to death. Alexis disappeared 3 days after filing a complaint against her roommate's boyfriend for sexual assault. Now her roommate, Jordan Jones, and her roommate's boyfriend, Barron Brantley, are charged with her murder. Jones will appear in court Monday morning. Brantley waived his appearance. As the family of Alexis prepares to bury her, many of these students want to keep the focus on the way she lived instead of the horrible way she died.
Let everybody say amen.
Amen.
This is 21-year-old Jaron Hughes from Chicago. This is 12-year-old Marcel Wilson. Jaron was best friends with Marcel's older brother. On January 2nd, 2022, Jaron, a father of 2, was hanging out at the Wilsons' household and playing video games after being kicked out of his girlfriend's home earlier in the day. While Jaron was on FaceTime with his girlfriend, the 12-year-old began teasing him. Because, again, he was 12 years old. It's his 12-year-old. The 12-year-old began teasing him about being kicked out of the home. That's when Jaron took out a handgun, with an extended clip and shot the 12-year-old in the chest. The 12-year-old stumbled into his mother's room, yelling, "He shot me," before collapsing on the floor. While Marcel's siblings attempted to put pressure on the wound, Hughes fled the home, leaving behind a shell casing, his phone, his jacket, and one of his shoes. Marcel would later die at the Comer Children's Hospital. While on the run, Hughes texted his girlfriend about how his life is over because of what happened. A search of his girlfriend's phone and Facebook account would lead investigators to his cousin's home in Racine, Wisconsin on January 14, 2022. Hughes' trial has yet to start. Stephen Christopher McAfee was born on December 26, 1996, to parents Michael and Suzanne McAfee. He resided in Roy Township, Michigan. Stephen loved music and played the drums. He would collect vinyl records. He was a stylish dresser who would often change his look. He was skilled at drawing and attended an arts high school. March 10, 2016. This would be the last time McAfee would be seen at his home at about 2:30 a.m. Attempts to reach him on his cell phone would prove to be unsuccessful. March 13, 2016. McAfee's parents would file a missing persons report. The case would go cold for nearly a year. Macomb County would start an investigation, interviewing multiple friends and family. Investigators would follow up on numerous tips, missing person posters were distributed, and a reward was offered. The family even paid for a private investigation, but sadly, all leads would be exhausted and the case would go cold. March 2017. Yvette Renee McDonald told her friend that she knew what happened to Stephen. The reason she knows this information is because her ex-boyfriend, Andrew Michael Fiacco, shot McAfee to death in a wooded area in Bruce Township. April 26, 2017. McDonald's friend would go to the police station with her father to tell them the disturbing details that were shared with her. That she helped Fiacco get rid of McAfee's body a month after the murders took place. McDonald and Fiacco were both arrested that day. April 27, 2017. Investigators searched two properties, a vacant area in Bruce Township and Fiacco's home. Remains would be discovered at both locations. Lower extremity remains and a skull were found buried near Fiacco's home, while a lower jawbone and clothing was found at the Bruce Township location, a vacant plot of land. McDonald would initially deny having any knowledge of the case before eventually admitting to police that 1 month after the murder, McDonald and Fiacco took an axe from the Fiacco home and cut the body in half. After cutting up the body, they placed the lower extremities and the skull into a duffel bag and buried it near Fiacco's home before burning the duffel bag. Fiacco would admit to driving McAfee to the wooded area, getting out and walking. Then allegedly, McAfee began to attack him. He claimed that it was at that point he pulled out a gun he had and shot him once in the stomach and 2 more times in the back. So the only issue with this is that Fiacco's 2 shots and an axe past the point of self-defense. 19-year-old Andrew Fiacco was charged with first-degree murder, mutilation of a body, lying to police, and felony firearms violation. 18-year-old Yvette McDonald was charged with accessory after the fact to a felony, mutilation of a body, and lying to police officers. March 7, 2019, Yvette McDonald was sentenced to 1 year in prison and 3 years probation. March 21, 2019, Fiacco was sentenced to 52 years in prison.
This is Stephen McAfee. Police say in March 2016, the 19-year-old was with Andrew Fiacco, a young man he grew up with through school. The defendant has autism. The victim has Asperger's. Police say McAfee intended to buy marijuana from Fiacco, but for some reason, McAfee drove him to a field and shot him twice with a handgun. When McAfee didn't return to his home in Macomb Township, his parents testified they searched for him and called everyone he knew.
Numerous flyers were passed out throughout the neighborhood.
It was so out of character for Stephen not to just contact us in some way.
I did a lot of searches through fields, places that Stephen would frequent.
Prosecutors say these parents reached out to Fiacco, who responded by denying knowing what happened to his friend and posting well wishes on social media. Police say Fiacco hid what happened for 14 months until his girlfriend confessed to a friend some of what went on. The defense appears to be trying to portray the young man killed as violent and with a motive. Defense attorneys asked his mom about the two's sexual history.
Stephen told me Andrew raped him.
And it's what Stephen told you?
It's what Stephen told me.
The judge ruled that questions about sexual orientation were not relevant or allowed, and the jury was told to disregard some of what was said.
And was missing, murdered, and mutilated by Andrew Fiacco.
The McAfee family wanted to make it very clear what they think of Andrew Fiacco and how long they thought he should spend in prison.
This is the face of someone who will kill again.
Today, Fiacco was sentenced for killing Stephen McAfee back in March of 2016. That's when he went missing. And for more than a year, police, search teams, and especially his family frantically looked for him, only for the investigation to go cold. But then a tip led investigators to Fiacco, and he took them to McAfee's remains. The truth eventually came out that Fiacco shot McAfee twice in the head after driving him to an empty field in Bruce Township. Then he came back to cut up his body and bury remains there and at his family's home. Fiacco was charged with first-degree premeditated murder, but he claimed it was self-defense. A jury, though, found him guilty of second-degree murder, mutilation of a body, felony firearms charges, and lying to police. Today, Stephen's family got what they wanted, begging Judge Jennifer Fawns to exceed court recommendations and put Fiacco away for longer than expected.
If he is released someday, he will use his charm to deceive his next murder victim.
So technically his sentence is 52 to 70 years because there is a 2-year mandatory sentence for a felony firearms charge. His defense attorney says they are absolutely going to appeal this sentence.
Stacy Degrandchamp was born on October 29, 1984, and was the only child of Rita Degrandchamp from Fort Wayne, Indiana. At the time of her death, she was a student at Wayne High School. August 15, 2002. 17-year-old Stacy Degrandchamp would get into an argument with her then best friend, 16-year-old Holly Boisvert, in the backyard of a friend's home. Witnesses at the party said that Holly was at the home saying statements such as, Degrandchamp was going to take an effing whipping tonight. She then walked into the backyard of the home and began to fight with Stacy. The two fell to the ground and began fighting, kicking, and hair pulling. A witness at the party pulled Degrandchamp away from the fight, after which she took a few steps back before falling to the ground with blood on her shirt. Blood that wasn't there prior to the altercation with Holly. In September of 2002, police detectives interviewed Holly, who claimed that while she was at the party, another friend told her that Degrandchamp was in the backyard. This friend assured her that Degrandchamp had no ill feelings towards her. That's when Holly decided to go say hello to her once best friend. According to court documents, when Holly entered the backyard, Degrandchamp began yelling, "What is she doing here?" Holly claims she then heard Degrandchamp talking about her friends, which really set her off. The two then started getting in each other's faces. That's when Degrandchamp pushed Holly and she fell over into some recycle bins. Holly says Degrandchamp then grabbed her by the hair and drug her from the recycle bins to a grassy area of the yard. Holly says that's when she grabbed Stacy by the wrists and threw her down onto the ground. When detectives asked her if she had a knife, Holly replied no. When police asked her how Stacy got stabbed, she said she thinks that Stacy probably landed on something when she got kicked into a recycling bin. In January of 2003, a witness told police that Holly changed into sweats and pulled her hair back before confronting Stacy. This would contradict her story that she walked out to say hello to her once best friend. The witness went on to tell police that Holly then washed her hands and put a knife in or near a car that was parked near the house, but continued to insist she did not stab Degrandchamp. Stacy's murder would remain a cold case for 18 years until it was reopened in 2019, when the family came forward with new information. In December of 2019, police would arrest Holly Boisvert. Court documents would state that with tears in her eyes, she told police, "I killed my best friend, and that's why you're here. If I had just walked away and not turned around to fight, Stacy Degrandchamp would still be alive." Holly pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter in December of 2021. 35-year-old Holly Boisvert was sentenced to 25 years in prison with 5 years suspended.
Ago pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter. The now 34-year-old Holly Boisvert was charged with murder for killing 17-year-old Stacy Degrandchamp during a fight. The crime happened in 2002, but it wasn't until 2019 that police were able to piece the case together and eventually arrest Boisvert in Wisconsin. The guilty plea calls for her to serve 20 years behind bars. Her sentencing scheduled for next month.
It was August 2002. Stacy Degrandchamp was a week away from starting her senior year at Wayne High School, but she would never make it to that first day of class. Detectives say that Holly Boisvert stabbed her in a fight over a guy. Stacy Degrandchamp's family describe her as outgoing, energetic, athletic, and they say she had a love for people. She was her mother's only child, but she found a sisterhood in her first cousins.
The three of us were only about 17, 18 months apart. So where there was one, there was three.
Jamie McMillan and her sister Tiffany Brubaker say Degrandchamp began shifting her focus from parties to college. They say she had already filled out an application to go to Ball State, where she hoped to major in computer programming. But on August 15th, 2002, her dreams were cut short.
It was like a terrible, terrible nightmare that you're just like, no, don't wake me up and tell me that.
Degrandchamp was stabbed to death during a fight with another girl. The case was cold for nearly 17 years before detectives began reviewing it again in 2019. Investigators say Holly Boisvert was considered a strong person of interest for many years. Over the last year, though, detectives began interviewing witnesses again, including Boisvert.
There were a lot of people who were still local, who were witnesses at the time back in 2002. In this particular case, that made a world of difference and allowed us to keep pushing forward with it.
Investigators were able to collect enough evidence to make an arrest, including the knife believed to be used in the stabbing. This photo captures the moment she was taken into custody.
To get that phone call, to hear that detective say that we got her, is just an amazing, amazing feeling.
It's just very satisfying to know that you can call that family and give them some news that you hope will help them move forward in life and hopefully answer some questions that they've been struggling with over the years.
It's been a long road for Degrandchamp's family, and they realize there's more to come. But Brubaker and McMillan believe there's a message in all of this.
Just don't give up hope, and you just got to stay positive and just know that one day it will happen.
15, 20 years, whatever, don't give up. That person has to pay for what they did.
December 17th, 2020. 30-year-old Caleb Solberg, 29-year-old Christopher Erlbacher, and a third person were at a bar drinking and eating. Erlbacher put mayonnaise on Solberg's food. Solberg got so furious, he punched Erlbacher, and your typical bar fight broke out. At that point, Erlbacher and the third friend left the bar and drove to a cafe about 10 minutes away. While driving to the bar, Erlbacher called Solberg's half-brother to let him know that he was going to shoot Solberg. Solberg and Pryor show up to the cafe where another fight breaks out. After the fight, Erlbacher got into his 2001 Chevy Silverado pickup truck and hit Pryor's car while Pryor was inside of it. When Pryor got out to assess the damage, Erlbacher rammed Pryor and Pryor's car once more. That same night, at around 10 p.m., Erlbacher struck Solberg with his pickup truck, but the first blow didn't kill him. Erlbacher went down the street, turned around, came back up the street, and struck Solberg a second time. Erlbacher would then drive over one last time just to ensure he had completed the job. Shortly after this, Erlbacher's vehicle broke down, so he called his father for assistance. He then called Pryor to let him know that he had killed his brother. Erlbacher claimed he did this in self-defense, but the courts weren't buying it. Erlbacher also claimed that he didn't intend to kill Solberg, and his lawyers attempted to reduce his charges to second-degree murder, blaming the actions on alcohol. But the judge wasn't buying that either. And in February of 2022, Erlbacher was sentenced to life in prison over mayonnaise.
Iowa man to life in prison for killing another by hitting him several times with his vehicle. In December, a jury found 28-year-old Christopher Erlbacher of Woodbine guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Caleb Solberg. Investigators say the men were eating and drinking at a Moorhead, Iowa bar the night of December 17, 2020, when Erlbacher put mayonnaise on Solberg's food. A fist fight followed. Prosecutors say Erlbacher left and later ran Solberg down with his truck outside of a Pisgah cafe.
Roberts Buncis was a 12-year-old boy who lived in a single-parent home in the UK with his father. He was a student at Haven High Academy in Boston. The head teacher at Haven High described Roberts as a popular young man who was destined for a life of joy, happiness, and success. 2 days before his 13th birthday, on December 12, 2020, he was lured out of his home by his friend, 14-year-old Marcel, with the promise of easy money for selling some cannabis for him. Marcel was expelled from St. Nicholas Primary School in Boston for bringing a knife into the school and threatening a female classmate. Marcel was also expelled from secondary school for dealing drugs. On December 12th, Marcel stabbed Roberts in excess of 70 times. A pathologist would say that the wounds to the neck and arm indicated that he was attempting to decapitate Roberts as well as cut off his hands. Roberts was also stabbed in the chest and abdomen. Roberts' body would be found the following day at Alcorn Green in Fish Loft. Marcel was arrested shortly thereafter. Prosecuting lawyer Mary Lorem said that Marcel intended to rob a store in an effort to get money to set himself up as a cannabis dealer. #goals. It would also come out in court that Marcel had messaged another boy claiming that he was fearful that Roberts would snitch about his robbery plans, to which the friend replied, "If he's a snitch, smack time." Lincoln Crown Court sentenced Marcel to a minimum of 16 years in prison for the crime. Justice Jeremy Baker warned Marcel that he may never get out because he has shown zero remorse. Robert's father, Edgars, read a statement at sentencing saying, quote, "How do I put into words how I feel? This is all wrong. No father should ever have to bury his son. I have lost my destination, my purpose. My life is in the cemetery. I feel empty. Nothing will change this." End quote. Brittany Jane Gargol was born on August 31st, 1996, to parents Suzanne and Everett. Brittany was described as smart, ambitious, and hardworking, balancing both schoolwork and employment since the age of 16. She loved doing outdoor activities with her family, including snowboarding, camping, and boating. She also enjoyed being fashionable, shopping at the mall, and showing off her attire to her large social network of friends. She had recently met her biological father for the first time and was getting to know this whole new side of her family. Cheyenne Antoine was Brittany's best friend at the time. Cheyenne had a rough childhood. She was put into foster care at the age of 2, and she stayed in the system until she was 18. She was SA'd and refused to talk about the abuse for a very long time. She began running away from her foster home until she was eventually removed. She tried to have a relationship with her biological parents, but her mother was still drinking and using drugs. And when Cheyenne was only 15 years old, her mother died. She had zero support and zero coping skills. So Cheyenne turned to drugs such as methamphetamines to numb the pain of her unresolved issues. Cheyenne was in the depths of this drug use a month before she killed Brittany. March 25th, 2015. Police receive a call about a woman's lifeless body on a rural road near Cedar Villa Estates, just southwest of Saskatchewan. Markings on the woman's body would show indications of strangulation, but at first officers had no idea who this was. So they decided to show pictures of distinctive tattoos to see if anybody would come forward to identify who this person was. It was a lion tattoo on her left shoulder and 2 stars on her left hand, and some of the clothing that was found near her body in an effort to identify her. A woman soon came forward to say that this was her friend, Brittany Gargol. Police found Brittany on Facebook, and her photos matched the description of the woman that they had found on the road. One particular photo piqued police interest, but the investigation was just getting started. Brittany's Facebook was your typical 18-year-old's Facebook page, but the investigators focused on one specific detail. The photo was of Brittany Gargol and her friend, 18-year-old Cheyenne Antoine. It was the last picture Brittany posted to Facebook before she died. Cheyenne was wearing a thick braided belt cinched at the waist of her grayish-black striped dress, and it looked exactly like the belt that was found beside Brittany's body. The selfie of the two friends was posted 6 hours before Brittany was found dead. And later that night, Cheyenne Antoine, the other woman in the photo, posted the following message on Brittany's Facebook wall. "Where are you, Brittany? Haven't heard from you. Hope you make it home safe, and I need my phone. Love you." This message was posted 12 hours after Brittany's death. The next day, police get a call from a staff member at the Lighthouse, an assisted living shelter. The caller says a woman has information about Brittany Gargol. The caller was Cheyenne Antoine. Cheyenne says she was with Brittany the night before her friend died. They got ready together and they went to Manchester's, and then they drove over to a house party. Cheyenne told police that Brittany asked a man for a lighter and invited him along with them. Cheyenne then said she got dropped off at the Lighthouse so she could visit her uncle. She said it was the last time she saw Brittany. She even put her uncle on the phone with police to back up her story. During a subsequent police interview, most of his information matched hers. But when police went to check the surveillance video at the Colonial, there was no sign of Brittany's white Chevy Cavalier, the car the girls were driving that night. And video footage from the Lighthouse showed Cheyenne and her uncle had never met up. So now nothing is checking out in her story. Police believe Cheyenne used her uncle as a false alibi. When they confronted him about it, he told them an entirely different story. He said that his niece told him that her and Brittany had been partying with two guys in a hotel room, and they started arguing over cocaine. Cheyenne said she came out of the bathroom and saw Brittany on a bed with marks on her neck. She then told her uncle that the men held a gun to her head and forced her to help them. She begged her uncle to cover for her by giving a fake story. After Brittany's body was found, Cheyenne was still taken to social media, saying, quote, "I miss you so much, Bert. I wish heaven had visiting hours so I could come see you. But I'm so glad you came and visited me in my dream last night. Woke up with tears in my eyes. I'm blessed to have met you and have you be a part of my life. Still can't believe those last 2 days were going to be the last 2 days I got to be able to hug you, talk to you, and laugh with you. I will cherish and hold all the good memories we've had over the years since grade 9 until we meet again. Looking forward to that day. I see you again. Say hello to my mommy up there for me. That dream felt so damn real, and you were all bubbly and happy, like you always were. I love you so much, Brittany Jane, and I miss you so much. You were way too young to go. Gone but never forgotten. You were truly an angel on earth, but I guess God needed you up there. You always believed in me, and I will make you proud, my girl. Rest in paradise, my angel." A woman called a member of Brittany's family to say that another woman told her that Cheyenne had come to her house about 3 weeks ago in the middle of the night. She said Cheyenne was drunk and hysterical, saying she had hit her friend with an object and choked her, and that her friend wasn't waking up. The woman said she looked outside and saw Brittany badly beaten, slumped against the window of her car. Now, Brittany's family gives police this information, who obviously want to talk to this woman. Brittany's family gives this information to police, who obviously want to talk to the woman. She reluctantly corroborates the story that Cheyenne came to her house around 4 or 5 in the morning, crying and saying she choked her friend during an argument. She said she told Cheyenne to leave and was too scared to report what happened. 2 years later, in March of 2017, Cheyenne Antoine is charged with second-degree murder. Brittany's car was thoroughly examined. It had dirt and long grass under the wheel wells, as if it had been driven through a ditch or a field. Inside the car was Cheyenne's iPhone. The device had connected to a McDonald's Wi-Fi at 4:30 in the morning, and her iPhone contained several photos of Brittany's last night, including the photo of Cheyenne wearing that black belt. The belt in the selfie is the same belt that was found by Brittany's body. A forensic pathologist determined Brittany's cause of death was ligature strangulation. Cheyenne's lawyer would tell the courts the girls were consuming drugs and alcohol that night, but it's unclear what happened after they left the house party. Cheyenne recalls being in McDonald's parking lot. Because remember, the Wi-Fi on her phone places her there at 4:30 in the morning, so she couldn't lie about that. She also remembers Brittany getting frustrated with her and taking away her phone. Cheyenne says that that's the last memory she has of that night. It's always conveniently the last thing that they remember. Always. Cheyenne initially denied being responsible for her friend's death because she doesn't remember killing her. She pled guilty to the lesser offense of manslaughter. Although Cheyenne says she didn't remember killing Brittany, she took responsibility for causing her death in the face of all the evidence against her and was sentenced to 7 years in prison. 7 years. At sentencing, Brittany's biological father, Everett Hillbaum, spoke first. He said he loved going camping and shopping with his daughter. Every time he drives past her old workplace, he said he's plagued with guilt and anxiety, saying, quote, "On her last day, I was supposed to meet Brittany at home so I could fix her car. So I could fix something on her car. I wasn't home. That day plays over and over in my mind. That was the last opportunity that I could have to see my beautiful daughter alive." End quote. Christy Wickenhauser went next. She's Brittany's stepmother. She said she loved getting to know her new stepdaughter. There were some bumps in the road at first, but they had created a strong bond. She said Brittany was excited about making plans for the future. She wanted to finish high school, have a family, and be successful. Then she turned to Cheyenne and said, quote, "The night you two went out, you ended her life. Not only did you take away a daughter and a sister, who we were just getting to know, you took away the lifelong potential we had to have her in our lives. The chance for her father to get to be there for the daughter he had already missed out on so much with." Brittany's aunt, Jennifer Gargol, said her niece would go to great lengths to make people feel better about themselves and their life situations. Then she turned to Cheyenne, saying, quote, "You robbed this world of somebody who has a special gift and would help a lot of people struggling in life. Brittany defended you and your friendship to her family, and what did you do for her?" End quote. Judge Gray determined 7 years was an appropriate term and imposed the sentence. She did leave Cheyenne with the following advice, though, saying, quote, "Miss Antoine, I sincerely hope that while you are in custody, you will take the time to address some of your personal issues. As painful as they may be, honor your friend by becoming a positive, productive, law-abiding member of the community. You owe it to her to preserve."
We're so grateful, and so thankful that the investigators that have been working on this for almost 2 years never gave up hope, because it was very hard for us at times to keep that hope up. Yeah, the details are not going to be pretty. I'm raising her 7-year-old sister who has a lot of questions and doesn't understand, so that's difficult. Brittany was very happy, joyful. She loved her family. She has 4 younger sisters. She loved her friends. She spent as much time with them as she could. She was a wonderful person whose life was cut short, and it's not fair. It's just not fair.
Some details that will help with closure regarding this incident. Brittany was a wonderful young person that didn't deserve this, and we truly, deeply miss her every day. Thanks.
I think that the word motive doesn't have much relevance in this particular case. This is just a tragic situation where drug and alcohol use exploded. My client had some very deep-seated personal issues that she was not dealing with, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, we'll never know, they turned into a very tragic situation for all involved. There's a significant memory loss. There's memory up to a certain point of the evening between my client and her friend, and unfortunately, the pertinent time when the offense actually occurred, there is no memory. Yes, I think that speaks to the intensive investigation that the police underwent. My client had an opportunity to review all of the disclosure and evidence in the case, and upon reviewing all of that, she was prepared to accept responsibility and acknowledge her role. I think it was evident for anyone who was in that courtroom. She feels immense regret and remorse for what has happened. This was her best friend. And the fact that she is no longer here as a result of her own actions weighs incredibly heavily on her, and she's going to have to live with that and deal with those issues as she moves forward.
Alexa Cannon of Roanoke, Virginia, was born on July 17, 1998. She graduated Patrick Henry High School in 2016 and was described as very popular and loved by her peers. She played volleyball and loved photography. She had two sisters, Emmy and Chloe, and they were an extremely tight-knit family. Alexa went to Radford University to study psychology. She loved music, art, and especially interior design. Alexa was a devout Christian who attended Second Presbyterian Church. She went on 2 mission trips to the Dominican Republic.
Here's something I found on the web.
Alexa was diagnosed with epilepsy at a very young age. This made school very difficult.
Something I found.
My Alexa keeps going off. I'm sorry. This made school very difficult for her at times. She would even have seizures in school from time to time, which led to bullying from her peers, because some people just suck. But she went on about her life and tried not to let it bother her. 20-year-old Alexa was best friends with 21-year-old Louisa Cutting, who also attended Radford University. She was known to be a very bright student and spoke both English and Spanish fluently. She was named president of the Radford Latino Student Alliance. Alexa and Louisa originally met online in 2016. They then lived across the street from each other in college, and by 2018, the two were inseparable and living in an off-campus apartment together. January 24th, 2019, at around 7 a.m., Alexa and Louisa's neighbors hear screaming. Then they hear the screaming getting louder and getting louder. But it wasn't until somebody mentioned a knife that they called police. At 7:45 a.m., police arrived at the apartment for what they thought would be a domestic dispute. Louisa answered the door, covered in blood, turned around, put her hands behind her back, and said, "Arrest me." When officers asked why, she said, "Because I killed her." When police walked in the apartment, they said there was blood everywhere, and Alexa was laying on the floor in a pool of blood with a kitchen knife sticking out of her mouth. Alexa was stabbed around 30 to 40 times, and officers pronounced her dead at the scene. When police searched the apartment, they found pills, grinders, and smoking devices in Louisa's room. They also found a brown chalk-like substance in the kitchen. She did call 911. Sorry, she keeps going off every time I say her name. She did call 911, but they couldn't make out what was going on because she wasn't actually talking to them. But at the same time, those neighbors were calling 911 also. After Louisa was arrested, she told officers that she was doing coke with the devil, along with alcohol, mushrooms, Adderall, weed, and Xanax in the hours before the murder. She hadn't slept in days, and she kept making random statements about the apocalypse and was reciting the Hail Mary in Spanish over and over and over again. She had also tried several times to fit her entire hand in her mouth. Investigators said she admitted to the murder several times, but she never gave them a reason why. At some points in the interrogation, she would be completely with it. At other points in the investigation, she would be completely out of it. But officers would say that she did show signs of regret and remorse. Louisa was charged with second-degree murder. She was represented by Chris Rehak and by Blair Howard, who is famously known for representing Lorena Bobbitt, the woman who cut off her husband's penis and then pled insanity. Her defense claimed that a combination of all the drugs and the lack of sleep combined led to a psychotic episode that led her to murder Alexa. While waiting for her trial, her behavior was so strange that she was actually sent to a mental hospital for a week. Louisa pled guilty to the murder of Alexa Cannon and was sentenced to 40 years in prison, with 20 years spent before she could be considered for parole. She was also instructed to never have contact with Alexa's family ever again.
In Radford, specifically homicides, and 10 News reporter Tommy Lopez is live outside the police department tonight to talk a little bit about just how rare a crime like this is and how search warrants now describe the terrible bloody scene that officers saw yesterday. Tommy?
Yeah, it is a gruesome scene, and a murder in the Radford area is rare, as is a woman killing another woman. That's what city officials are saying today as police here at the department continue their investigation. Jenny Wilder, a spokeswoman for the city of Radford, says police are still looking into what the motive could have been.
It's a tragedy, really, for the city of Radford. stuff like this doesn't really happen in Radford that often, and it's definitely something very tragic for our community, very tragic for the university community.
It is rare. It's the first homicide in 3 years, and there have been just 2 in the last 8 years in Radford. Neither involved Radford students. University officials have made sure counselors have been available for students and staff. Spokeswoman Caitlin Skaggs says the community is heartbroken and devastated.
She will be greatly missed by many, that she was a very involved student, a psychology major, and involved in a series of clubs and organizations across the campus.
Search warrants paint a gruesome picture of the crime scene as police walked into the off-campus apartment the two shared on Clement Street. They say Cutting answered the door covered in blood. She told officers to arrest her, telling them, quote, "I killed her." Cannon was lying on the ground with multiple stab wounds. Officers took a serrated butcher knife from the scene, Cannon's cell phone, and pills and drug paraphernalia. Radford suspended Cutting, but school officials say they can't tell us if that happened before this incident. There is not a date set as of now for an initial court appearance for Cutting, and police are still asking anyone with information in this case to contact them. Live in Radford, I'm Tommy Lopez, 10 News, working for you.
Now with the details. Yeah, Alicia, the family of 17-year-old Cisco Knightner tells me that he and some friends had been playing a basketball game on the PlayStation 4. He was the oldest of 9 siblings. He's pictured here with some of them. I spoke with his family earlier, and they tell me the shooting happened right in front of at least one of his brothers. Now, today I spoke with the family, including his 11-year-old sister, who's obviously devastated about what happened.
I never thought that a friend would just do that to him.
11-year-old Faith Knightner Diggs was just texting her brother, 17-year-old Cisco Knightner, yesterday.
I was texting him at 9:51 and he never texted back.
It was just an ordinary conversation.
I was just asking him, how's he doing? Is he good?
She never imagined it would be her last.
Some type of altercation took place. He was shot and he was deceased on scene.
Chief Deputy Melron Kelly with the Columbia Police Department says Cisco had been playing a video game with 3 other friends. Shortly after midnight, he says one of them, a 16-year-old, drew a gun and shot him.
What caused this to happen? What temperament rose to the effect of using a weapon? And those are questions that we want answered.
Faith says he was a good big brother.
He always defended his sisters and brothers, and he never gave up on us or himself.
And through this tragedy, she's trying to remain strong.
I know that when I pass, I'll see him again. So.
Birthday, Cisco. You're 18. We all love you and we miss you.
A celebration of a life.
He didn't get to see 18, but we could see 18 for him.
Of a young man taken too soon.
Even the reason is unbelievable, but it's still unbelievable. I don't think it really actually hit none of us completely yet. You would think so.
Last month, Cisco Knightner Jr.'s family got a call they could never imagine. Authorities say the 17-year-old was playing video games with 3 other teens when an argument led to another teen shooting him in the head. Friday would have been Knightner's 18th birthday.
All of us are hurt. All of us are going through stuff. All of us can barely go through the day without thinking about him.
As red and white balloons filled the sky, dozens of friends and family remembering what Knightner was known for.
His smile. I think everybody out here can agree to that. His smile. Cisco will walk in a room and he will light it up, and I'm serious. It can be a funeral, and when Cisco walks in, somebody gonna smile.
Now his mother, Frances Ruff, has a message for young people listening.
Everybody is not your friend, and you don't know what's going on behind your back. So with that being said, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. I enjoyed every year of my son's life for 17 years. It was short, not by choice, but I don't regret anything.